Welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. It's not just any Yahoo Sports Daily. We're here every single day, 9 to 11, every single weekday, 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern, hanging out with you. Today is a special show with a special theme because today is YSD's 100th episode. Spectacular. I cannot believe we've been since August. We launched in August. We are already at 100, so we're gonna have some fun today. We got surprise guests. Those silhouettes are there because I'll be transparent with you. Caroline and I do not know who's coming on at 9:30 and 10. What we know is that one of them is a surprise guest for Caroline. One of them is a surprise guest for me, and then also at 10:30 because we're just bringing in all the heat. The game joining us at 10:30, so we'll get all of his thoughts. It is a wild, stacked day for the 100th. Plus, Caroline, we're gonna have some 100th episode fun with some 100 themed. We got a lot to get into before we do any of that. I think we both echo one thing. You and I sit in front of the camera, get to do this show every day. It would not be possible were it not for the great staff behind the scenes. So as much as today is fun for us, we wouldn't be sitting here if it weren't for Doug, Josh, Mike, Hutton, everybody else that works tirelessly on this show. So this is a celebration for me and you, but it's also, in fairness, a celebration for everybody.
We get to do the easy thing and we get to do the fun thing. The real work and the real brain trust for this show all happens behind the scenes. And it all happens because of every single person watching and listening, whether it's for the first time or the 100th time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing us to have truly the greatest job in the world. Let's do another 100 and then another 100 after that and then another 100 after that.
Yeah, I can already hear Mike saying, Mike's already saying, let's go. I hear you. Let's get to the show. We'll start with the big news from the last 24 hours. Harbaugh out as the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. And look, I think a lot of this was jarring. Certainly, if you were anticipating what would happen, not making the playoffs left that door open. It's amazing how a kick can make such a difference. But I think there's a lot of stunning elements to this, Caroline. The fact that it happened so quickly, the fact that we're getting so many different reports right now. But clearly, at the very least, the most appealing open job now is Baltimore, while at the same time, the most appealing coach to absolutely everybody is going to be Harbaugh. So both of them are going to land on their feet just fine.
I think every coach that's on the coaching market should be scrambling for an opportunity to go to Baltimore. And I was shocked by this move, truly. And you bring up the missed kick. That missed kick is the reason why the Baltimore Ravens are not in the playoffs. But I don't think that's the reason why John Harbaugh got fired. I think it would be silly. I think it would be a rash decision to say, if you made that field goal, you'd have a job. And since they missed it, now you don't. It was so much more than that. Because I feel like the Baltimore Ravens over the last several years have invented new ways to lose games. I mean, how many times, countless times, this Ravens team, coached by John Harbaugh, has ended up losing games with leads, double-digit leads even, late in games and in the fourth quarter. And that final game of the season against the Pittsburgh Steelers was just yet a new heartbreaking way, and in just an absolute gut punch fashion, that the Ravens lost a game late in the fourth quarter in which they had a lead. I am sure that the Ravens brass was just kind of tired of it. I think it's probably gotten stale. And we've heard several different reports of why eventually the Ravens and John Harbaugh got a divorce. One reason that was reported by Ian Rappaport was that he lost the locker room. Ian Rappaport even said as much, quote, he lost the locker room, and the relationship between Harbaugh and Lamar was getting some friction, that the relationship was getting stale. So if it really came down to that, if it was as simple as the Baltimore Ravens needed to pick between John Harbaugh, albeit an incredibly well-respected coach in the NFL, one of the best coaches in the NFL, a Super Bowl winning head coach in the NFL, or could have been three-time MVP Lamar Jackson, who's not even 30 yet, I think the Ravens made the correct decision in siding with Lamar Jackson.
No, 100%. And look, part of this is about the fact that Lamar's going to cost $75 million next year. They need to figure out an extension or a new long-term agreement with Lamar, so you want to make sure he's happy. And I think that all makes sense. To your point, there is no job. Don't get it twisted. There is no job out there on the open market right now that can even compete with Baltimore. You're talking about stable ownership that gave 18 years to a head coach and a player that you just mentioned is a two-time MVP that's just entering his prime. I know he's had some health concerns this year, whatever. I'm not worried about that. Lamar's got years left to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So, frankly, every single coach right now, even if you have a gig, you're looking around saying, you're calling your agent saying, hey, should we at least talk to Baltimore, right? Like, this is the sort of dream situation. I hear you. You could say, well, what about the fact that they just fired somebody for not winning a Super Bowl? Coaches want to go where they can win, and you know you can win in Baltimore. But the other side of this is interesting to me, Caroline, because Shefty reported yesterday that within 45 minutes, according to Harbaugh's agent, 7 different teams had already reached out about Harbaugh. Okay, that's fine. Now, you see here, there are 7 head coaching vacancies, one of which is Baltimore. So I'm going to challenge everybody for some early morning math. That means we'll take Baltimore out. Baltimore didn't call. That means one team with a coach still on payroll called the Ravens. And I don't think that's going to be the exception. I think that's going to be the rule. For all of the conversation we've had about, oh, Miami's not moving on from their coach. And we've seen the votes of confidence across the board. All of that is thrown out the window when a name like Harbaugh comes open. You can't tell me that teams that aren't happy with their coach, aren't in love with where it's going, aren't at least internally right now saying, should we make a move? Should we be reaching out for Harbaugh?
What if Buffalo loses to Jacksonville in the first round of the playoffs? There's been a lot of frustration with Sean McDermott. Maybe Buffalo wouldn't have moved on from Sean McDermott, but when Harbaugh is out on the streets, then you start to reconsider. I have been one, and don't call me crazy, I'm not on anything this morning. I have been on record saying that Nick Sirianni has made boneheaded, stupid in-game decisions on 4th down. I know that he has won multiple Super Bowls. Has won one Super Bowl and gone to multiple Super Bowls, rather. I don't know. I think the Eagles could also upgrade at that position. And who wouldn't want to coach that roster in one of the best football towns in America? So at this point, when a coach like John Harbaugh, a future Hall of Fame future Hall of Fame coach is on the market, I think that you're going to see a lot of teams that you never would have even considered would make a coaching change at least think about it. At least think about what their future would look like with John Harbaugh. And all of that being said, too, I do want to kind of throw out a cautionary tale to Ravens fans, because I know that Ravens fans are probably throwing a parade in the streets this morning because they're so glad to see John Harbaugh go. I even heard a Ravens fan yesterday say, I would rather them, try a new coach and get it wrong rather than not try at all. Careful. Be very, very careful with that. I used to live in Nashville. I used to cover the Titans in Nashville every single day on Sports Talk Radio local in Nashville. And I was in favor of the Titans moving on from Mike Vrabel. Now the Titans are even worse than they were with Mike Vrabel. And Mike Vrabel has the Patriots at 14-3 in his first season there. So just be careful what you wish for.
Well, and this is where I constantly remind everybody as a Raiders fan, I say this all the time, how many head coaches have I seen? Whatever it is, 17 since 95? I mean, the number is jarring. And what is jarring is the opposite portion of this, because whoever the next coach is going to be for the Ravens will literally only be the 4th coach ever for the Baltimore Ravens as a franchise since they moved to Baltimore. Ted Marchibroda from 96 to 98, Brian Billick from 99 to 2007, which is also a hell of a run, and then Harbaugh for 18 years. So Ravens fans have no idea what it feels like to be a Browns fan or a Raiders fan or a Jets fan where you're constantly changing coaches all the time. And look, I get it. The argument Ravens fans are going to make, and, Hutton, that works on our show and does a great job, is a big Ravens fan. And I can hear him right now in my mind saying, well, you don't settle just because you're worried about what it might turn out to be. That's right. That's fair. I'll buy that. But it is a cautionary tale, because certainly teams always presume, fan bases presume when they've always had quarterbacks, they could just find another quarterback. And fan bases presume when they've always had good coaches, they could just find another good coach. We don't know how this one's going to play out. And I don't know that Harbaugh will have to make a quick decision, because to your point, I mean, look, this isn't lost to me, the irony. Like, what if Pittsburgh gets just railed in the first round of the playoffs? Tomlin gets fired. Like, is Harbaugh going to be interested in the Pittsburgh gig? Could Harbaugh be interested in the Buffalo gig? We still don't know all of the openings that are going to come out there. So I could see where some teams like Cleveland will be just rolling out the red carpet right now saying, good sir, whatever you would like, we will take you and we will give it to you. But I think there's a moment here where Harbaugh needs to be patient and make sure he doesn't take a gig when, in fact, he could wait and see if the dream gig comes open.
And I think he understands that. I think that John Harbaugh would understand that, hey, look, right now I'm just coaching for my legacy. John Harbaugh's not coaching for money. John Harbaugh is not going to take a job just to have a job. I wouldn't be surprised if John Harbaugh just takes a year off, does TV, sits on his couch, goes to Italy, like do whatever the heck you want to do. I don't think John Harbaugh would rush into a situation with, say, the Cleveland Browns or the Arizona Cardinals, not necessarily the best coaching openings out there. Because I think what John Harbaugh wants right now is to go win a Super Bowl, go win multiple Super Bowls, go win as many games as humanly possible and maintain or even supplement his legacy. Like, one thing that we know about the Harbaughs, they are football guys. They just want to coach football. They just want to win games. They don't want any extra fluff. They don't want any extra razzle dazzle. I don't think they want to deal with any of the extracurriculars that come with coaching a football team. John Harbaugh just wants to coach football. So if the perfect opportunity does not arise, I wouldn't be surprised to see John Harbaugh just not take a job.
Coaching contracts are fully guaranteed. And as multiple insiders pointed out yesterday, Harbaugh and his agent were adamant that everything be stated as fired for a very real reason. He has 3 years and $55 million left on his contract.
Whew.
He will see those 3 years and $55 million no matter what. Now, we don't know. There's a thing in contracts called offset language. Most players have them, where if somebody else hires you, then that money goes back to the team. Coaching contracts do not always have offset. The better coaches oftentimes get that taken out of their contract. So what I don't know, and we don't know yet, is 3 years, $55 million. If somebody else wants to pay him $15 million, does that go on top of that? Like there's just a monstrous amount of generational wealth to be made. Also, I think it's important to note here that it puts everybody in the hiring cycle in a little bit of a holding pattern. Like Kevin Stefanski, pictures were all over yesterday of Kevin Stefanski in New York getting ready to interview for the Giants job. And we've talked a lot about what the best jobs are out there. Well, every one of those teams, if you're doing your proper due diligence, now is in a very weird situation because you can't hire Stefanski, no matter who you are, without talking to Harbaugh first. But then you may have to wait to talk to Harbaugh, which takes the chance that Stefanski gets irritated in the waiting game and being the second choice and all of these different things. So I'm using that as a example, but frankly, as every single team now tries to figure out who their next head coach is going to be, the timing of when you can talk to Harbaugh is going to be significant.
100%. And I think every team in America will now be putting everything on pause because John Harbaugh is available. And that's exactly how it should be. But if you're John Harbaugh and you're looking around at all of the open jobs, because sure, maybe jobs come open as we go throughout the playoff process. I wouldn't be surprised to see at least one more coach on the chopping block. If you're John Harbaugh, where do you go?
That's a great... I sit out a year. I mean, honestly, I sit out a year. I wait and see kind of what my opportunities are. My legacy is not going to get tarnished in a year. If I have to pick one of these jobs as Harbaugh coming in and knowing that he's going to take Todd Monken with him as his offensive coordinator, if we believe any of the reports that he's very attached to the staff, he's going to take Monken with him, then I have to wonder, Todd Monken with the Giants, how does that look? I think having a quarterback in place is significant. I've said to you before, I don't think the Falcons have that. So I lean Giants. What about you?
I think it's the Giants as well. It just makes so much sense, right? Because John Harbaugh is a very smart coach. He's been around. He's done this. I don't think he's going to go anywhere where there's not already a quarterback in the building. Is Jackson Dart a franchise quarterback? I don't know. We don't know the answer to that question. But they're in a heck of a lot better of a quarterback situation than the Cardinals are, than the Falcons are. And it's also the New York Giants. That is a premier franchise in the NFL. Not a great team as of late, but it's the New York Giants. I think that means something to a guy like John Harbaugh that respects the sanctity of the NFL so much. The Giants, I view as the best open job right now in the National Football League. There's so many pieces that just make sense for the Giants. And I know that the Giants have already pledged their allegiance to Joe Schoen, that they're retaining their general manager, Joe Schoen. But if I'm Harbaugh, I'm like, look, I'm sorry. I know you've already made the social media graphics. I'm not signing up to come coach for a general manager that doesn't really have a great proven track record. So if you're Harbaugh, I think that you have the skins on the wall and you have the rapport, you have the repertoire to be able to say, look, I'm coming on a few conditions. And one of those conditions is that Joe Schoen gets the boot. Not a great look, but it is what it is.
We will keep you updated on it. Plus, over the course of the next few days, we'll figure out who should take that Baltimore job. But coming up, we're going to keep it 100 on this 100th edition of Yahoo Sports Daily with some of the biggest stories in the NFL. Coming up next. If we keep it a buck, we ask. That is Cam Ward on the Titans. Why are we bringing that up now? Because obviously, it's one of the greatest quotes of all time, and definitely one of the greatest quotes of the NFL season. But also, if you're just tuning in, it's the 100th episode of Yahoo Sports Daily. We even have the cute little 100 down there as we keep it a buck. So we're going to keep it 100 across the board. We're going to use the 100 theme, and we're going to take a look at some of the NFL hot topics, and we will start here. How about this? An NFL playoffs without Mahomes, Burrow, Lamar, Dak, Goff, Jaden Daniels, Baker. Could this postseason actually suck? What do you think, Caroline Fenton?
No. Anybody who says that, I only like the NFL playoffs if it's Lamar and Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow is like the equivalent of like, no, I don't drink tap water. I only drink Evian, not sponsored. Kick rocks, NFL elitists. If you can't enjoy the total chaos that has been this NFL season, the sheer unpredictability that will be this postseason, then that's on you. That is not the fault of the structure or what has kind of gone down. If you think that this playoffs is going to suck just because it is not star-studded, that's on you. Just enjoy the great chaos that we are going to get in this postseason. I like that it's new places, new faces. I like the fact that we get Bryce Young, even though he's below 500, hosting a playoff game. I enjoy the fact that Trevor Lawrence and Josh Allen is one of the most intriguing quarterback matchups of this NFL postseason. Just enjoy the chaos.
Look, first and foremost, I bought a soda stream because I only drink water that is bubbly. I don't drink tap water at all. Thank you very much. I am an elitist, and that's going to shine through right here because, look, there are two things can be true. These games are going to be entertaining because I think this has been one of the wildest, most entertaining years we've ever had. Yes, but I think we could also say that it kind of sucks and we don't have some of these quarterbacks, and I don't think we're going to have necessarily that same sexy quarterback matchup when this thing is all said and done. Like, are we?
Who cares?
Are you people? I mean, just random. Like when we finally get into it, are you really excited from a quarterback standpoint? Are you truly excited for Bo Nix versus Bryce Young in the Super Bowl? No.
Well, that's not going to happen.
It could. We've got these playoff
Broncos Panthers rematch, though.
Okay. I mean, I picked
decade later.
In a beautiful world, this is the time that we see Josh Allen rise from the ashes and he goes on a run. But that guy right there, Bryce Young, has every bit the same chance right now. I think two things can be true. It's going to be a great playoffs, and this has been, I think, the best season I can ever remember in the NFL because it is wild and it is unprecedented. There's also been a lot of bad football games. Like, can I tell you right now that man, Trevor Lawrence, isn't going to have another one of those playoff meltdowns where he throws a bunch of interceptions? No. I don't know. Are we really 100% sure that Sam Darnold isn't going to, the bed all the way through this thing, but Seattle's still going to will them to? That's where, look, I think it's true that it's going to be an entertaining playoff. I just think some of the quarterback play is likely to suck along the way. Speaking of Bryce Young, who's now caught several strays this morning, let's go to the second topic here. The 8-9 Panthers hosting a playoff game. So let that sink in. Should the NFL consider a rule change, considering every time something happens in the college football playoff that people don't like, they run around like Kermit the Frog and the whole time trying to change the playoff? Well, now we have an 8-9 team hosting a playoff game. Should the NFL consider a rule change that if you're under 500, you cannot get a home game in the playoffs?
That was very nice, might I add. No, just because something happens one time that you don't like doesn't mean that we need a full structural change. Winning the division should mean something. So many of these great rivalries that we get in the NFL come from being in the same division and seeing each other twice a year, and familiarity breeds contempt. That's what makes the NFL so fun. So I think that we need to maintain the integrity of what winning the division means. So what if the Carolina Panthers are 8-9 and they're hosting a playoff game? I am so excited for that. I live in Charlotte and I can feel the buzz. I can hear people talking at the grocery store and people talking out Walgreens, talking about, are you going to the game? Did you get tickets? Are you going to, host a party for it? Like, there is so much buzz in this city for this game. Like, let the Panthers have something fun. We don't always have to change stuff just because we don't like it.
I actually agree with you completely. This is beautifully ugly.
Hey.
And look, at the end of the day, if it's a losing team that doesn't belong in the playoffs, well, then just go out and beat them. And there is this element to me where this is something that college football could learn from the NFL. Because, frankly, we saw this one time in college football where we didn't like the seating, and all of a sudden it was like, well, we got to change that. I mean, we can't let that happen again. I look at this and say, we've learned to accept that this is just one of the weird quirks of the NFL. And frankly, it is what it is. I don't think we need to turn around and make sweeping changes because a bad team from the NFC South is in the playoffs. And to your point, there is so much opportunity for Carolina. There's so much hope for this franchise. That stadium is going to be rocking even if that game doesn't turn out their way. It doesn't really matter one way or the other. They get this playoff game in large part because they're raising a banner. You raise a banner when you win a division. There's no two ways about that. Mm-hmm. If you raise a banner doing something, I have no problem with you getting a home game as a result of it also, even if it's a losing record. That asterisk doesn't really matter. The Carolina Panthers are playing more football games than most of us that are sitting around fans of teams that didn't make the playoffs. So give them all the credit in the world. How about this one? All right, we've been complaining about the college football calendar. It's not perfect. I acquiesce that. Neither is the NFL's calendar. So how about this? Should playoff team coordinators be allowed to interview during the postseason?
I actually don't hate the idea of a full hiring/interview freeze through the Super Bowl. That whether you have an assistant coach that's coaching in the playoffs or not, the entire NFL is in a freeze. And we all just collectively as a football society focus on playoff games. That we don't have coordinators that are flying back and forth, interviewing this place, then coming back to coach here. I mean, they're big boys. Like, they can handle it. I'm not worried about their packed schedules. If they can't focus on a playoff game because they're too focused on an interview, that's on them. That's not on the calendar. But I don't hate the idea of having a block of the calendar that this is football time. This is when we play football. This is when we coach football. And then once the season is over and we transition to the off season, once we're fully in salary cap season, then we transition into interview time. I don't hate that idea.
I don't hate that. I feel like it's probably hard to enforce, though, because tampering is inevitable. The other side of it is, to me, I don't want any coach to be punished for the success that coach has. I think we have this sort of old school mentality sometimes that, well, I don't want my coaches distracted while they're getting ready for the playoffs. Like, do we think that coaches don't have normal lives? Like, do you think that what's going on at home might be a distraction, or just life in general, like how they're feeling that day? Those can all be distractions. Plus, I think this sort of old school, well, coaches sleeping in their office and they're spending 20 hours a day. More and more, when you talk to successful coaches, they talk about finding work-life balance. Curt Cignetti in college is actually, at this point, picking up a lot of headlines for the fact that he tells his guys to go home. Like, you don't need to be here all the time. Sean McVay has said the same thing about the Rams organizationally. Like, we have this concept that if you're Robert Saleh, boy, you must be spending 20 hours a day working on that game plan. And that's just not the way the modern NFL works anymore. There's so many limitations on practice. There's limitations on meeting times. There's limitations on how much interaction you can have. Like, all of these different things exist. And I think we sit here and just feel like coaches are 20 hours a day in their office. They're not. So if Robert Saleh wants to go home and while he's home, he wants to interview for a job, good on him. I don't think it really pulls that much distraction away. Also, even if we took the world that you suggested, which I don't think is a bad suggestion of waiting till post June 1st or January 1st, I should say. All right, well, if you're a coach that's waiting for your opportunity to interview, you're still prepping for that roster you're going to interview about. You're still prepping for whatever interviews are going to be coming. So you're still spending time studying. Like, if you told Saleh today, you cannot interview until after we're eliminated, fine. Do you think that doesn't mean that he's not sitting down every night and looking at the roster of the teams he might be interviewing for so that he can have a competent interview? So to me, I just think that we have this kind. It's no different than for years they said players couldn't have any love other than football. I just don't believe that. I believe that there's more balance than ever. I also believe we have our first mystery guest. They are locked in. I have no idea who they are. But coming up next, we will get our first mystery guest of the day on this celebratory 100th episode of Yahoo Sports Daily. Welcome back to the 100th episode of Yahoo Sports Daily. We got mystery guests, and they're going to be based on our fandom, I'm sure. Caroline's mystery guest is the first person up. I'm going to be honest with you. We were even muted, so we have no idea who is joining us right now. But let's reveal it. We're going to do the great reveal of the 100th episode mystery guest. And, there, Caroline.
Go Tigers.
Oh, it is so lovely to see your face and to hear your voice.
Go
Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers. Can I embarrass you for just 1 second?
Go ahead.
Can I show you the mug that I was drinking my coffee out of this morning?
Oh, look at that. That's cornball. I love it. That's cool. Thank you.
Coach,
That's
thank
nice.
you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
All right, so I got to ask you, you've been able to watch this LSU football program from the sidelines since that exciting and magical 2019 season. Give me your thought process. What do you think about the program where it is right now?
Well, I think they got the right guy in Lane Kiffin. You know, Lane's a friend of mine. He's going to do a great job. I think Burge Osbury is going to do a great job. They have the right idea. You know, for this transfer portal and NIL, he's the right guy. And I do believe that he's got some work to do. You know, I think that the roster's not where it wants to be, but as he did at Ole Miss, he's going to put a championship team together. There's no doubt about it.
Coach, I had the opportunity to cover you when I was working on game day, and I was out at game day at LSU while you were coaching, and it was crazy. It really was a transformative moment for me because I saw how much the community got you and how much you got the community. So just tell me a little bit about, like, looking back on your time at LSU, what has LSU meant to you?
Well, you know, growing up, you know, it's a place I always wanted to coach, but I understood the magnitude of being the head coach at LSU. You have to embrace the whole LSU community. That's Carolina, that's the students, that's the Cajuns down on the bayou, that's the guys up in North Louisiana, that's those guys that are working on the All Rig. Because look, come Saturday night, from 7 to 11, everybody's got their TV and everybody's cheering for the Tigers. And you're a representation of everybody in the state of Louisiana. Now, we had a deal, one team, one heartbeat. Look, we wrote letters to the band. We had the band come talk to us. We had everybody pulling on the same side of the rope. And when that happens, this state becomes very, very powerful. And we did a great job of recruiting the state of Louisiana. And then we just happened to go get a guy named Joe Burrow. and the way things went. So everything came together. You know, Derek's with me over here. We had a plan. We put it together. But LSU's a place that you can't do it. But you have to remember this. You have to represent the people of Louisiana to become powerful.
Louisiana's a special place. It's a different place. It's a different country. But you got a guy from Ohio to come to LSU and be adopted as the chosen one, the godson of the state of Louisiana, and Joe Burrow. Walk me through your first conversations or your first recruiting trip with Joe Burrow.
Well, it was a little different. You know, Joe's different, you know, and so am I, you know, but I needed a quarterback. And he came on a trip. You know, he was going to Cincinnati. Luke Fickell was the head coach of Cincinnati, recruited him. His girlfriend was going to Cincinnati. His daddy lived an hour from Cincinnati. Joe was going to Cincinnati. And but he wanted to talk football, and he wanted to eat crawfish. So I said, hey, we can do that. Now, my first conversation with Joe said, Coach, he says, Coach, I don't want to talk to you. You're too good of a recruiter. I don't need to hear it. You know, I wanted to tell him to get back on the plane, but I couldn't. I needed a quarterback. So the next day we had a football meeting, and we had a whole staff in there. His dad was in there. It took me about 2 or 3 minutes to figure out Joe was by far, including all of us, the smartest guy in the room. And he showed his ability to be a very, very smart quarterback. And, you know, I coached with Jimmy Johnson. I coached with Pete Carroll. And the number one quality of any quarterback, we wanted to be very smart. Joe had that. And that night we went to eat crawfish. And then I took him in the back. I said, hey, I want you to be my quarterback. I said, by the way, you have to earn the starting position. I got some guys ahead of you, but I know you better. And by the way, I got two receivers pretty good. You don't know about them yet. Their name's Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. I think you're going to like them. and away we went, man. And that Thursday, he committed to being our quarterback, and everything came together.
As well as you know, Joe, so many of us were talking about sort of the way he appeared at the podium this year when he was talking about just, you know, questioning how much fun this is and what he's doing. What did you make of Joe Burrow's sort of conversation this season?
Well, I was surprised, but I know Joe, it may be a bad day or maybe somebody peed him off right before he went up there. He's going to bounce back. I mean, he is going to bounce back. But, hey, I got one word to tell him, you know, as you get older, it's not always fun. We got to grind through it. But if I was in his case, hey, when he's feeling like that, dial 1-800 Bank of America, baby.
Money talks. That is for sure. And money is a big reason why the college football world that we're living in now looks much different than it did just 5 or so years ago. What do you think here? How do you think you'd be able to coach in the NIL era?
It'd be great. It'd be great. Hey, I can walk through the front door of the cash.
Don't have to
That's
hide
just a
it
joke.
anymore.
Hey, that's just a joke, okay? No, but I do believe the players ought to be paid. No question about that. And NIL, transfer portal, it's all about competing. It's still about relationships. It's still about picking the right guys. Hey, you got to pay the right guys too. And it's all about competing against your personnel and all about being prepared. And I think we had all those things in place at LSU when we were we had to compete for Jamar Chase. He was committed to Florida. We had to go find Justin Jefferson. He was a 2-star. So it wasn't like those guys just fell in our lap. It's just a different way of competing.
Coach, as much as you talk about competing, you still got the fire, right? Do you want to be a head coach somewhere currently?
Yeah, I'm just one call away, man. I got my phone ready. I'm ready to go. Yeah, I still want to coach, and maybe the right thing will come along. LSU's taking care of me. I got my home back in Baton Rouge. All 3 of my boys are coaching. I got 2 boys in Miami, and they're analysts in Miami. So we're cheering for the Canes tomorrow night. And although Ole Miss has done a great job, but I'm a big fan of Mario Cristobal. I got my oldest son coaching at Tulane. All 3 of my boys are in the college football playoffs. So that I'm very proud of. So they set. So I'm ready to go.
As a former coach, though, how do you react to, like, we've seen all of this taking private planes back and forth for the assistant coaches that are at LSU, but they're at Ole Miss. Like, as somebody that stood on the sidelines trying to win a national championship, you've done it. How does that come across to you?
Well, let me say this. I think they're trying to make the best of a bad situation. I think they should have let Lane coach. Now, that's my own personal opinion. They let the guy at Tulane coach. I was there. Coach Summerall coach. He was at Florida. It was seamless. There was no problems. And then all this stuff happened. So whatever happened, that's my own opinion. But look, I'm glad that Ole Miss is winning. I don't want them to win tomorrow night because my boys are coaching at Miami. But it looks like they're doing the best of a very, very difficult situation.
Speaking of coaching, you bring up how you're good friends with Lane. You were on his staff at Tennessee. You were on his staff at USC. Is there a future for you on Lane's staff at LSU?
All you got to do is call me. He's too busy riding around his Bentley. I better not see him at the red light in his Bentley. I'm gonna give him a little stuff. We used to drive around in pickup trucks. Now he's driving around in the Bentley.
What are you driving around in these days?
Oh man, I got me a nice Mercedes. He can
How much,
nice, Coach?
yeah, I mean, Coach, look, I'm good. How much different is the SEC now without Nick Saban in it to you?
It is different. I got to say it. Coach brought some toughness. All these coaches are doing very well. But when you played Alabama, man, they were the benchmark. Alabama, we knew that we had to beat Alabama and beat Alabama like we did over there. It was the first time in 8 years we had beat them. There were battles, but, he set the benchmark in recruiting. He set the benchmark in toughness. I think the SEC has lost a lot of its toughness because of guys like Coach Saban, myself, are not in it. We're hard-nosed coaches. I think that the outlook of it's obvious. Look what Indiana did to Alabama. You'd have never seen that in those days. And, when Coach Saban was there, you had to be a physical football team in the SEC to compete. And now that element seems like it's kind of washing away.
You bring up Alabama. If you ask any LSU fan from any generation, if you ask what is LSU's rival, you're going to get different answers. For me, in the time that I was at LSU, my rivalry is Alabama. If you ask someone older, maybe it's Florida. Older than that, maybe it's Ole Miss. Maybe it's Arkansas. LSU's unique in that LSU doesn't have one single rival. LSU hates everybody and everybody hates LSU. But when you were coaching there, who did you view as LSU's rival?
Carolina, ain't no question it's Alabama. It was Alabama when I was raised at 6 years old when Charlie Mack was trying to beat Bear Bryant. There's no question. Look, Bear Bryant wanted to come in my home to recruit me. My daddy said no. So I understood that. But look, when I got to LSU, I know every day that you have to beat Alabama. And look, Carolina, I was reminded, I like to stop at 7-Eleven. I like to get me some Red Bulls. And every morning I'd stop and get me a Red Bull at the 7-Eleven. And the little old lady would say, "Man, coach, you got to beat Alabama." So I was reminded of that almost every day.
That's
Which is
awesome.
one of the most remarkable things about the SEC for years. Because, I mean, going back to Saban, how many coaches got fired because they couldn't beat Saban, right? It's like just that one. We look at the legacy so strange from college football, from a whole era where they were trying to take on arguably the greatest coach of all time, right? Like it's wild how much that was controlled by the dominance of Nick Saban through that Alabama era.
And look, it was the same thing with Bear Bryant. Charlie Mack got fired because he couldn't beat Bear Bryant. So, Coach Saban is a great coach, but so was Bear Bryant, and so was Charlie Mack, but he couldn't beat him. So, this rivalry been going on a long time.
Coach, I've said so many times that maybe the best job in America is a head coach that's been relieved of his duties with a nice buyout. Kind of nice to be able to collect a check, but also be able to go to the beach, go golfing, whatever your favorite extracurricular is. What would you say to somebody that says that that's the best job in the world?
Well, it all depends how you left. We left 15-0. We had one of the best teams in college football. I got to be the head coach of the LSU national champs. So I fulfilled my dream. That was my 5th national championship. I'm still young. I was 60 years old. I was living on the beach, jogging on South Beach every day, getting paid by LSU. And so I had no complaints, so it was a good job. But you know what? After a while, that gets old, and then you kind of miss it. And so it all depends how you left. I do believe that.
I know Tiger Stadium will always hold a special place in your heart. Other than Tiger Stadium, if there was one stadium you could just go stand on the sidelines and experience a game day in, what stadium do you miss the most other than Tiger Stadium?
Oh, man. Hey, USC Notre Dame, man, on 2:30 on a fall afternoon at Notre Dame. The Trojans are playing the Irish, and the band is walking through the tunnel. You can't beat it. Can't beat it. And win, but you got to win. You got to win. You got to look at touchdown Jesus at the end, and you got to be a winner. There's no question.
And what do you make now that rivalry is on pause? We won't see USC Notre Dame for the next couple of years.
BS. Okay, you know how I feel about that? Don't get me started about that now. Hey, I'll go jump somebody's neck. The University of Southern California needs to play Notre Dame. Men ought to be men. Take the challenge. That's part of being a USC Trojan. It always has been, and it always will be. Whoever's trying to change that is wrong. It's going to go back, and they're going to go back in history, and they're going to be sorry that they did it. That's my own personal opinion.
Obviously, you're picking Miami. We know that. But give me your college football playoff prediction. Who's going to win it all this year?
Well, I really like Miami's defense. I think Corey Weatherman has done a tremendous job. Mario Cristobal has built 2 line of scrimmages he's built his line of scrimmages in the because of his time at Alabama. I mean, you look at that offensive line he got; they're dominant. Okay, I do believe that Miami and Ole Miss is going to be a great game. I think Miami's going to win, and I do believe that Indiana is going to beat Oregon. But I will say this to you. Oregon's defense was very, very impressive last week. I think Tosh LaPointe does a great job, and I think their defense was heard enough about Texas Tech's defense, and they answered the call. I think Miami and Indiana is going to end up being in the national championship. I think it's going to be a close game. But I got to go with the blood. I got to go with the Canes. Although Signetti, I don't know what that guy has done. He's played some magic dust or something on that program. The guy is a phenomenal coach. He's a little different. I know him. I tried to hire him when I was at Ole Miss. What a great job he's done. Hats off to him. But I think you're going to see Miami and Indiana in the national championship.
Yeah, he wins. Google him. Like he was not wrong when he said that the day that he got hired at Indiana. Coach, before we get you out of here, whenever I meet someone new and they ask where I went to school and I say LSU, they always say, "Oh my gosh, were you there in 2019? Oh my gosh, tell me about that 2019 national championship." And it was nothing short of magical for me as a fan. And I know LSU fans across the country feel the same way. There's me. Graduation
Beautiful.
day. Never should have graduated. Worst mistake I ever made. You're the architect of that team. If you could describe that year, that run, that championship in one word, what would you say?
Magical. But we didn't start off like that. It wasn't like, you hear these coaches, and I'm gonna say something and it may piss some people off. They need to get pissed off. Okay. Hey, we're gonna win the championship. We're gonna do this. We would never talk about that. We're talking about getting better today. And we had a work ethic, and we were led by a general. Joe was a general. Now, I had some great assistant coaches. Joe Brady came in and put in the spread. It fit in perfect to what we were doing. And we had some great leadership, like great lines of scrimmage, Lloyd Cushenberry up front. We had Patrick Queen on defense, man, Kelvin Chasson. We had Dave Aranda, Steve Ensminger, on and on and on. It was one team, one heartbeat. But as we went through the season, we just started getting better and better and better. And then all of a sudden, we're sitting there going, hey, when we go beat Alabama, at Alabama, we have a chance. That's all we thought about. We had to beat Alabama. But think about this. We had to beat Alabama to win the SEC West, okay? And then we had to go and play the SEC championship and beat Georgia. I mean, you weren't thinking about national championship, because if you was, you put down your hands, you're going to get whooped. So we had to take them steps one at a time, and it was very challenging. These teams, we were undefeated, and we had to beat Georgia and Alabama to get in the championship. And there's only 4 teams. These teams crying to get in the playoffs with 3 losses? How embarrassing. Go in the weight room and get your team better. You don't deserve to be competing for the championship. That's my opinion. Okay, so as it went on, now, when we beat Georgia pretty good, and then we beat Oklahoma pretty good. We could have put 100 on their ass, to be honest with you, but we didn't. And then going into Clemson, they're undefeated, and we were behind. It was the first time we were ever behind. Nobody ever panicked. We had complete confidence in our football team. But if you talk about one game at a time, that season we took one team at a time, one game at a time. And look at this. We beat 7 out of the top 10 teams in America that year. Okay? So to me, that's deserving of a national championship. So when I look at a national championship team and what they accomplished, look at what Indiana's doing. They're undefeated. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Those guys are on their way to a great season. To me, you lose 3 games, go home and go in the weight room. Shut up.
Well said. And now that team is the standard. Every team across America gets compared to that 2019 team. He was the architect of it. Coach, thank you so much for your time. This was truly the greatest surprise. Appreciate you for everything you've done for my team. And go Tigers.
Hey, Caroline, you're beautiful, but it's absolutely more beautiful? That helmet behind you, baby. Go Tigers.
Isn't it good? It's good.
Coach O, thank you so much.
Thank you, Coach. Show, man.
Great stuff from Coach O. What a surprise for our 100th episode.
Yeah.
Great stuff from him. Coming up, we'll get back to some of the NFL news. Some coordinators out that are surprising. We'll tell you about it next on Yahoo Sports Daily. Welcome to Yahoo Sports Today, the Carolina Fenton, Jason Fitz. Some interesting news yesterday in the coordinator front as Kliff Kingsbury is out as the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. This comes a year after the Washington Commanders went to the NFC Championship game and Jayden Daniels won the Offensive Rookie of the Year. This comes a year after it looked like the Commanders were set for unparalleled success moving forward, and we felt like the organization had taken a massive step, and now all of a sudden, both coordinators gone in Washington, and Kliff is going to be a coveted name somewhere, Carolyn. This is just one of those things where, as a coordinator, he's respected. I was really surprised by this move.
It doesn't make any sense. Explain that to me. Kliff Kingsbury makes Jayden Daniels the Offensive Rookie of the Year and gets the Commanders to the NFC Championship game after being in the depths of hell for decades. Make it make sense to me. This move feels so much to me, moving on from Kliff Kingsbury and from Joe Witt Jr., their defensive coordinator, just kind of feels like a scapegoat for Dan Quinn. That maybe ownership said, well, somebody's going to have to pay for the fact that we had a disappointing season. But I don't look at this year and say, man, you know what the problem was in Washington? Kliff Kingsbury? Of course not. So I feel like this is a massive, massive loss for Jayden Daniels and the Commanders, and it's going to be a huge gain for whatever team lands Kliff next.
Well, and multiple reporters made it clear that Jayden Daniels wanted Kliff to stay. So now you've got this weird moment where, yet again, I'm going to continue to hammer this home for everybody that has a young quarterback. I get it. You want to put the right things around the quarterback because you want to see a Caleb Williams type jump. But you just got to acknowledge that every single time you ask your young quarterback to learn an entirely new language of an offense, you are starting all the way over, which is just, it's difficult. I think you're right. This does feel like a scapegoat moment. And it also, frankly, it's suddenly a little bit PTSD for Washington fans who thought that they'd finally found stability with new ownership and new coach. Everything's going to be fine. Look at who we are moving forward. We're not the old Washington football team. And then you turn around and make mass change. I get it was a disappointing season, but that's a talented coach that's going to be scooped up by somebody almost right away. Where does Kliff make the most sense? I'm going to tell you flat out, now that we know that we have no idea what Baltimore's going to look like. But I just keep thinking about Kliff Kingsbury liking mobile quarterbacks in general. And then I think, where's there a mobile quarterback that's been a two-time MVP that's also just hitting the prime of his career that knows he can win a lot of football games? It's Baltimore. I don't even know who's going to be the head coach in Baltimore. But, man, if I'm Kliff Kingsbury, I'm speed texting Lamar right now saying, hey, man, love to work with you when the new staff is built.
Yeah, I agree that he won't be the head coach in Baltimore, but let's say if a Robert Saleh gets hired in Baltimore, if it's Jesse Minter, who's spent several years in Baltimore before, if it's a defensive-minded head coach, my first call is to Kliff Kingsbury. And if I'm Kliff, understanding his talent for working with mobile quarterbacks, I think that's a perfect fit. If it's not Baltimore, I think he'd be a really fascinating fit with Jackson Dart in New York. I think that what Jackson Dart needs is a coach that he respects and a coach that can not take his cape away from him, but really hone in his abilities. Like Jackson Dart needs someone to tell him, like, you have to slide, like know when to hold him, know when to fold him. And I think that Kliff Kingsbury would be a really great fit style-wise and personality-wise with Jackson Dart. Maybe it's too much of the same kind of guy, but I think that would be an interesting fit.
I'll give you one more real quick, and that they're not even eliminated yet, but Philadelphia, mobile quarterback, loves to run the football, loves innovative run. I mean, come on. I mean, I'm just saying, Kliff with the Eagles offense, I mean, we can go on and on. Kliff is going to be coveted. What about the other side of this? Brian Flores getting a ton of buzz. Now, what should be noted here is that his contract is over with Minnesota. He could re-sign with Minnesota and be the defensive coordinator. There have been reports that he is a candidate for the head coaching job in Vegas, maybe elsewhere. There's also a report yesterday that he's a defensive coordinator candidate in Dallas. So he has no contract now. Minnesota can turn around and re-up him. He could go somewhere else. What do you think makes the most sense for Flores?
I think it's Minnesota. I think it's staying put with the Minnesota Vikings. I think that's the best fit. If not Minnesota, I do see him getting an interview in Baltimore. I like that fit in Baltimore. I think he would be a good fit in Baltimore, but I don't, if you're Jerry Jones or if you're Brian Schottenheimer, your first call should be to Brian Flores, because I think between him and Robert Saleh, they are the best defensive minds on the market. But if it's not Minnesota, I think it's Baltimore, possibly as the head man.
I think he stays in Minnesota. I will continue to die on the hill that if you are suing 32 owners, as Flores currently is, it's going to be hard to get one of those owners to decide to also give you a head coaching job. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that keeps Flores and Gruden out of any of these cycles as we move forward. What about Saleh? You mentioned Saleh, who obviously has just done tremendous things with the 49ers. Where do you think a good fit for Saleh would be?
Again, I'm going to keep bringing up Baltimore for these great coaches because I want great coaches to go to great organizations where they can win now. So I think my ideal dream scenario for the Ravens would be Robert Saleh as your head coach and Kliff Kingsbury as your offensive coordinator. If it's not Baltimore, his best fit's in San Francisco because Robert Saleh has already had to live through the unfortunate experience that is being the head coach of the New York Jets. So you don't get very many cracks at the apple cart here as being a head coach in the NFL. So does Robert Saleh really want to sign up for being the head man in Cleveland, in Tennessee, for the Raiders, just dreadful organizations, bad coaching jobs? I don't think so. So if it's not Baltimore, I think if I'm Bob Saleh, I stay put in San Francisco.
If I could just take you to church every Sunday, I would continue to preach. I don't think you take a job where you don't have a quarterback if you're a coach that's taking your second opportunity. It's so hard to get a third opportunity. If there's not a clear set plan to a quarterback, I think it's hard to justify taking the job. That's why if I'm Saleh, I'm interviewing for the Baltimore job, and I'm flat out saying, hey, we'll run whatever offense Lamar wants. I'll take care of the defensive side. We'll bring in the offensive coordinator Lamar wants. We'll let Lamar cook on his own, and I'll take care of the defensive side of the ball. Short of that, if I don't have a clear path to a quarterback, I am not taking a job. Oh, here's what I know. It's the 100th episode of Yahoo Sports Daily, which means the special guests continue. We have another surprise special guest. I don't know who it is. Caroline doesn't know who it is, but it's the 100th episode, and this one's for me. So we'll figure out who the special guest is coming up next on Yahoo Sports Daily. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. It's a special 100th edition of this, which means we have some special 100th edition mystery guests. Caroline already had Coach O come on, her lifelong LSU fandom, and that's where she went to school. We all know that. It is now time, Caroline, for my mystery guest. We have literally no idea who we're about to be talking to, so we get the drum roll, and we'll see if we can get a magical reveal here on who our guest is for this magical 100th episode. Tim Brown. Oh, let me tell you something. This is awesome. Tim, you don't know this. You would never know this in the entire world. Okay, so Tim, I'm just starting a story with Tim before we even get into anything. I was in a band years ago. I was in several bands, but I was in a band years ago that never really made it. But we played this one show. It was us and the Backstreet Boys and Boys to Men. never forget this show. We played this show, and it was sponsored by Athletes in Action, which was a charity that you were part of. And afterwards, you had found out that I was a big Raiders fan. So after the show, there was a Tim Brown signed football that I still have in my house that came from you, buddy. So, like, this is such a dream come true for me. You are the most iconic Raider of my lifetime. Thanks for hanging out with us on this 100th episode.
Oh man, that's great. I didn't know any of this until about 10 seconds ago. So it's great to be here, man. Great to be, your guy, man. It's good to hear that.
This is awesome. I'm just gonna fangirl for the next 10 minutes while we talk to you. No, it's incredible.
As you should.
Talk to me. Yeah, thank you very much. Talk to me a little bit about what it's like. I've always wanted to talk to you about this. You lived through so many decent football teams and then a great football team. And now you watch a team that it just isn't what it was. How hard is it for you as just such an iconic part of this franchise to watch the struggles of who they are now?
Yeah, it's really tough, really tough. I was with Mark Davis at the NBA Cup a couple, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I just told him, man, look, I'm not coming back, not because I'm embarrassed or whatever, but it's very difficult for me because, I went through some tough times with the Raiders, and this is worse than what we went through. So it's hard to sit there and watch what's going on the field when they really don't have a chance to win football games at this particular point. So, it's very tough, man. It really is. And, you feel bad for the guys, but at the same time, somebody has to be part of the group that turns this thing around.
I read Amy Trask's book, of course, former CEO of the Raiders, and one of the chapters just highlights the badge of honor that it is for so many Raiders fans to be a Raiders fan, that there is just this group, this fraternity, just this badge of honor that it is to represent and to love that team from somebody that played for this organization. What was it like for you to be in such a special fraternity?
Yeah, look, Raider Nation is the reason why I stayed with the Raiders. I mean, I had a couple opportunities to leave, but I realized after the '96 football season that these guys looked at me as something more than a football player. I mean, they relied on me, for their happiness. I felt like on the weekends, and I never forget that '96 we were a horrible football team. We were losing every game at home, and there was one game where the fans started to boo us. Right. So I had this radio show that was pretty popular up there in Oakland, and I just went off on the fan base. And I was scared because we're talking about Raider Nation here. You just never know what could happen. But the next game, we were just as horrible in that game, and people started to boo. And you actually saw people going, "No, don't do that. Don't do that." And I was like, man, these guys are really listening to me. They're really, tuned in to what I'm saying. So I still do toys for tots and things like that with Raider Nation after all these years. I mean, they are a special group. And, when you're following a football team that's up and down with all the turnarounds that the Raiders have, it is pretty remarkable that the fan base is still so strong.
That is in large part, as someone that was part of that fan base at that time, even watching you play, you represented stability to all of us. I think that's the thing that maybe players don't always understand. Like the team sucked so much then, couldn't get a quarterback, nothing was working right, but you were the one constant on Sunday that you knew Tim Brown was going to show up, and you knew Tim Brown was going to be absolutely incredible. I say that because I would say that Max Crosby is in many ways the current version of that. He is stability for the franchise. Now we're trying to figure out if Max is going to stay there. He's not going to stay there. You faced those same questions in your career. What advice would you give Max on when it's the right time to just turn around and say, I need to find something else?
I think the one thing I do realize now, being on this side of the game, is winning championships is what this thing is all about. You don't play a team sport to get individual awards, right? And I have a lot of individual awards, and I'm very thankful for those individual awards. But I tell you what, every year around Super Bowl time, man, it is the worst time of the year for me. Because I am constantly reminded that I never got that accomplished. And I think Max has to be, within himself, he had to be able to say, I can win a championship here. And if he feels like that, I think you should go for it. Now, fortunately for me, I had a real run. We had the AFC Championship, the Tuck Rule game, and then we went to the Super Bowl. So we had a real run at it. So I feel good about that. But man, the ultimate thing here is to try and win a championship. And, if Max feels as if he can get it done, of course, I want him to be with the Raiders forever. But at the same time, you got a lot of life to live after football, and you got to be able to live with your decisions right now.
I can't help but look over both of your shoulders as you're talking. I see your Canton bust and your Heisman Trophy. Pretty star-studded backdrop there. What are you most proud of in your football accomplishments?
Well, the Heisman Trophy is super special because you are the only one that particular year to receive the award. And, it certainly puts you on a map, right? Whether that's good or bad, you're going to be on the map. And I think for me, it was a great thing because it gave me more confidence in myself than maybe I even had going into that season. And, to end up with the in the Hall of Fame, it's not a 1 year, it's not a 2 year, it's not a 5 year deal. It's 8, 9, 10 years, especially at the receiver position that you have to put in to get that honor. So I love them both, and I will never choose between the two. But certainly, the Hall of Fame is it's a very special honor.
You mentioned some of the heartbreaking losses you were part of when the Raiders had a run, and I remember this so just clearly as a fan. The Siragusa late hit on Gannon knocks him out, playoffs end. Then you have the Tuck rule, playoffs end. Then you have the Super Bowl, and obviously that didn't go the way anybody expected. But now I feel like when we look at certain organizations, like look at Buffalo and the way that Buffalo just hasn't been able to get over the hump. You got over the hump to get to the Super Bowl. What sort of would you tell fan bases and organizations when they're just stuck right at that level and can't quite get there? What is the key to getting over the hump?
Well, for us, it really started the last game of the 99 season. It was the 2000, January 2nd or something in 2000. We were in Kansas City, playing Kansas City in a game that we had, our season was over with. And during that game, we got down early in the game by 15, 17 points or something like that. And Tyrone Wheatley on the sideline just had a conniption, just had a fit. And, he was yelling and screaming, I'm tired of losing to these guys. I'm tired of this. I'm sick of this. We got to do something. And, man, everybody just caught that energy. And we came back and won a game that we had no reason to win, other than that, we had a brother on the sideline going off. And they were playing for the AFC West championship, AFC West division title at that time, I believe. So, but it was that energy that we talked about all offseason that we brought into the 2000 season, and that we ended up in the AFC Championship game that year. So, it really takes a bunch of guys getting together and getting on the same page and really believing that you can get something done, man. And the Raiders need a couple more players. They need some more help for sure. But I think if they can get the help, now we got to get a new coach and all that kind of stuff. I get all that, but certainly this thing can be done very quickly at this particular point.
Yeah, you mentioned the Raiders need some players. Raiders are also in a head coaching search right now. Looking around at the NFL, who would you want to coach the Raiders?
I think when Harbaugh was let go, I think he became number one on everybody's list. No doubt about that. So a guy like that who's had so much success, I mean, if he would entertain, coaching your team, I think you should definitely take a look at that. But if not him, I think it's going to be one of these hot offensive coordinators, Kubiak, or someone of that nature. I heard Flores, in Minnesota. It'll be somebody like that for sure. Clint from the Commanders, he left his job to pursue head coaching job. So it's going to be somebody like that, I'm sure. But if Harbaugh wants the gig, I'm more than certain that they're not going to be any teams that are going to turn him down.
I know Al Davis famously leaned on so many people when he's making decisions. Mark Davis obviously does the same, right? And so that's become Brady in a lot of this conversation. How involved have you just been in talking to the Raiders organizationally about how to fix the culture?
Unfortunately, not much at all, man. I don't get any phone calls before asking, and that bothers me a little bit. It certainly does, because I know the fan base listens to me still. If I say something, they're going to react to it. And but it is what it is. Mark Davis and I, unfortunately, we didn't really, we weren't there. Mark was there early in my career. Then he was away, and I really never ever saw Mark again until his dad passed away. So all those years, we really didn't have a connection. So he has a better connection with other guys, Charles Woodson and guys like that, which is great. But every time I'm around him, I try to let him know, man, look, I love the Raiders, always will love the Raiders. If I can do something, I'm here. But I don't want a job though, brother. I'm not trying to be, and so I think from that standpoint, he knows I'll do whatever he needs me to do to help the team.
You played in the NFL in a time where there were so many great receivers in the game. And the position has changed so much. What has been the biggest change or difference that you've seen from your time playing a receiver in the league to now?
Well, there's no hard bump and run anymore. Our big deal back in the day was, the fight was the first 5 yards. Once you got past 5 yards, it was okay. Well, now we can play football, right? But it was a battle to get off the field, because we had cornerbacks who were trained to, try and stop you at the line of scrimmage, So, and I wasn't a big physical guy, so that was. Gruden got there. We invented, hey, anytime you want to go in motion, Tim Brown, go in motion. So anytime I want to get a guy to back off a little bit, if I just went 2 steps in motion, that guy would automatically back up. So I think that's one of the big things that has happened. Certainly, you have the rules where you don't have to worry about getting your head taken off going across the middle anymore, like we had to worry about back in the day. I think those two things sort of relaxes the receiver position and let these guys know they can basically do whatever they want to do. If they got a quarterback who can get them the ball, it's very difficult for a guy to mimic a receiver. It's a DB to mimic a receiver's route running, right? So it's going to be very tough for a guy to knock a ball down for a really good route runner, like a Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. It's almost impossible if you're not putting your hands on this guy, at the line of scrimmage. So I think from that standpoint, just the freedom that the receivers have these days is just a lot different than what we had back in the day.
Who do you love watching play right now? Who's your favorite?
I think those two guys I just mentioned are certainly top of the list for sure. Of course, Devontae. I liked him better when Devontae was at the Raiders, but certainly, the way he goes about doing what he does. He's not a physical guy. He's not a fast guy, but man, he has the ability to run routes, and it's a beautiful thing to watch.
Look, on behalf of Raiders fans everywhere, there haven't been a lot of bright spots. I mean, I'm almost 50, and I've been watching Raiders football since I was 8 years old. So there haven't been a lot of bright spots. You, my friend, have always been one of those bright spots. It's been a joy to get to watch you in your career, and you've impacted lives beyond what you could ever imagine. So thank you for sharing our 100th show with us, and thanks selfishly for just coming on and talking Raiders football with me. I could do it all day with you, brother. We really appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks again. I appreciate you guys inviting me to be here.
Thank you so
that's
much.
Incredible. My day's made. That is absolutely incredible. Tim Brown, just sharing delight. I'll try and put my professionalism back on. I can't promise anything. Durant gets his revenge. We'll tell you about it next. Yahoo Sports Daily. Oh, oh my God, that is spectacular.
Oh my
100th work there. That's Wilt holding up the 100th. And then Carolina and I, obviously, we were there. We were there for that moment. A great work from Doug on our 100th episode of Yahoo Sports Daily. Also, I'm not going to lie, I look pretty good in that suit, Carolina. I'm not going to lie. That is a becoming
looks
suit
nice.
on me. Look at me.
The skinny tie works. It is very
Yeah,
nice. Also, Wilt Chamberlain, huge fan of the show. So, Wilt, we know you're watching. We know you're listening. Thank you so much.
That thing in Caroline's lap, for any of you that don't know, is called a camera. So it's what phones you used to have to have.
And a notepad.
Yeah. Camera and a notepad. It's amazing that these things exist. It's the 100th episode. We're celebrating with Wilt, but also we're going to use this to get into a little bit of NBA fun, some NBA talk, and we're going to do it with a new segment we like to call On Target or On Something. And look, I think the guys behind the scenes might be dedicating this to the fact that half the time when they call me at night, I'm 3 edibles in. But either way, we're going to figure out from a quote from a notable NBA players, thank you, coach or front office member, we'll figure out if the person who said it is on target or on something. So we'll start with Jaylen Brown. He didn't score 100, but he got halfway there over the weekend while guarding Kawhi Leonard in a Celtics win over the Red Hot Clippers. Here's what Brown had to say after the game when he was asked specifically about what motivates him.
I just wanted to win. Last game on a road trip. Wanted to finish out strong. You know, I believe I'm the best two-way player in the world, so I just wanted to come out and show it.
Jaylen Brown, the best two-way player in the world. Is he on target or is he on something, Caroline?
He's on just a little bit of something. I don't know what I can and cannot say on internet TV, so I'll say he's just on a little bit of a gateway drug, not a hardcore drug. Because I don't think that this is the craziest thing in the world to say, especially coming off of that performance, dropping 50 and keeping Kawhi Leonard in check. Now, I would like to point out that Nikola Jokic exists, Giannis Antetokounmpo exists. We have some elite two-way players, some of the best players in the world. But I also think we need to acknowledge what Jaylen Brown is doing this season. I mean, Jaylen Brown will and should be getting MVP votes. So I'm not going to say that he is the best two-way player in the world because we have so many great ones right now in the NBA, but I don't think it's the wildest, craziest, most insane statement I've ever heard.
So, in full transparency, a couple of our big bosses are big Celtics fans. So for you two, generally, I will say, wow, this is a great take. Now you just stop watching. Look, he's on something.
Go Celtics.
But I will say this. I was a little surprised when I went down because this is just me. I look at it. I'm like, no, that's impossible. And I start looking up some of the advanced analytics. I'm like, actually, he does have a little bit of a case. But I can't get past the thought. You mentioned Giannis. I will add Wemby to this conversation. I know that both have battled injury issues, but it wasn't I'm the best when I'm healthy versus guys that aren't healthy. It was just simply I'm the best two-way player in the world. The defensive impact of what Giannis and Wemby are both capable of doing, given their size simply that they offer to this, is something that is of note to me. So I have a hard time saying best two-way player in the world, but I will say one of the best two-way players in the world, which is still pretty darn good if you ask me. A little bit on something. How about next up, KD, Kevin Durant. We all know that KD is going to be in his feels. He didn't score 50, but he did hit the game-winning shot against his former team, the Phoenix Suns, which is great. And then he was asked if it felt good to deliver the win against the team that traded him. And that's where things get a little spicy. Check out his response.
Most definitely, you know what I'm saying? A place that I didn't want to leave, and my first time being, to sound, I don't want to sound too dramatic, but I will, to be kicked out of a place, you know what I'm saying? And felt like that, I've been scapegoated, you know what I'm saying, for the issues we had as a team last year. Yeah, it felt good to beat them and hit a game-winning shot.
So he says he was scapegoated and kicked out. What do you think? On target or on something?
I think he's on target there. And look, I'll be the first one to call out when KD is being a crybaby. I'll be the first one to say KD put the phone down, enough of the Twitter fingers. But here, I think he's on target. I do think that he was scapegoated in Phoenix. I do feel like there were a lot of issues with the Suns that they all just kind of pointed to KD as being the reason why. I do feel like KD got kind of a raw deal in Phoenix, Fitzy.
Yeah, no, 100%. He's on target with this. And two things can be true. he can be overly emotional at times, but like I have no problem looking at any sort of a life-altering moment with a bunch of brutal honesty. Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong when you get dumped with looking at it later and saying, yeah, she dumped me. Like, okay, cool. Like, it's part of life. Well, the Suns decided they simply didn't need KD. They didn't want KD. They moved on from KD. They believed that they're better without him. So, yeah, I mean, you can try and sugarcoat that however you want, but I have no problem. And it's funny, for most athletes that say that, we turn around and say, I love the fact that he has a chip on his shoulder and he finds motivation in everything. Like, but now all of a sudden it's like, oh, KD yet again being emotional. No, I think in this situation, he's 100%.
I think it's fair.
Like this, he's on target. All right. How about this? On target
and good
on
for him.
Something. Oh yeah. By the way, yeah.
Good for him for having that moment.
Self-awareness is a life skill. So I'll give a ton of credit for that. How about for Knicks owner James Dolan? He was on the Craig Carton show on WFAN, and he made it very clear what his expectations are for New York. A little bit shocked. We'll find out on Target on Something. Check this out.
Anything short of an NBA championship is a disappointing season for the New York Knicks. Is that how we're taking it right now?
Yeah, I would say the look. I mean, we want to get to the finals, right? And we should win the finals, right? But when it comes to this is sports. You guys, this is your business,
right?
Anything can happen in sports, but getting to the finals, we absolutely got to do.
Yep.
Right. Winning the finals, we should win.
So is he on target or on something with the getting to the finals? Absolutely, but we should win a title this season.
Yeah, he's on something. I love the enthusiasm and I love the confidence in his team. Now, would I be shocked and floored if the Knicks did win a championship this season? No, I wouldn't. But I wouldn't put the Knicks in the top 3, top 5 of NBA Finals contenders right now as currently constructed. So to say that they should, I think is crazy. Now to say that we should make the postseason, yeah, 1000%, I can get on board with that. To say we should win a playoff series, yeah, then I can get on board with that. But you should win the NBA Finals when there are 3, 4, maybe even 5 teams in the West that I would pick over the Knicks. I think you're on something here, James Dolan.
Yeah, 100%. He's on something. This is a tough spot for any owner to be in because certainly, especially in New York, my God, if he goes on Craig Carton's show and he's like, well, we're just hoping to make the playoffs and have proximity to a championship, he will get absolutely annihilated. And when he comes out and says, we should make the NBA Finals and we should be competitive, I think even the way he hedged that was him telling the world, I get it, we're not OKC. I don't think what he said is that different. The delivery's a little different, but I think he was giving you the same message that Steve Kerr just gave everybody about Golden State. I mean, he's telling you, we should get to the NBA Finals. Oh, man, I guess I can't say that. We should win a championship? Sure. Like, it wasn't even a convincing argument. I think he was trying to sell himself on it. And this is a tough spot to be in. The East is wide open. And right now, certainly, the Knicks at 23-13, they're having a season where they are in the conversation for the best teams in the East. That is all fair. But to your point, Caroline, first and foremost, I wouldn't say should to the NBA Finals in a conference where Boston, that you just talked about, is playing well. And, oh, my God, they could get one of their stars back depending on how rehab goes. And then the Pistons, 27-9 right now, by the way. The Pistons have done everything you could ask for them. The Raptors right on the heels of the Knicks. There is some balance at the top of the East. And then all of those teams I just mentioned would be lucky to even try and hang with OKC or Denver when they're healthy, or at this point, San Antonio, as well as they're playing in the matchup nightmare that they've been. Houston, I go up and down the list. I'm not even sure. Look, we keep trying to justify that the Lakers aren't really an NBA championship caliber roster. I don't think they are. I would take the Lakers over the Knicks in a 7-game series right now.
I don't think that's I don't think I would, but I also don't think that that's absolutely
maybe I'm on
crazy.
Something.
I also, yeah, maybe just a little bit. That's fine. It's okay. We don't judge here on the show. It's Wednesday after all. I just think that you need to be very careful with those comments. That when you say that we should win the NBA Finals, that is what the headline is going to read. Knicks owner says team should win NBA Finals. You know what that does? That sets an expectation to your fan base. And if you fall short of that, if you fall short of winning a championship, which is where you set your expectations, everyone is going to be upset. Everyone is going to expect sweeping changes if you fall short of that. So are you prepared for that? Are you prepared to make sweeping changes? Are you prepared to make your second coaching change in 2 years? Are you prepared to make sweeping roster changes? Are you prepared to do what's going to be necessary if and frankly when you fall short of expectations? Like what you say, the words that come out of anyone in a position of power's mouth matters because people are listening to what you say. So when you set the expectation that high, and I have no problem with setting high expectations whenever you should have high expectations. The Knicks should have high expectations, but championship expectations, those are awfully lofty. So be careful with what you say there.
And again, I think, look, and part of this is last week he was trashing Tibbs and why you can't really win a championship. I say trashing. He was just being blunt about his thought on Tibbs as head coach. So this feels to me like, you're trashing your ex on social media one day, and the next day you're showing us pictures of where you're going to vacation this summer and how great life always is. And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I don't know the right approach because certainly we and everybody else spent days trying to figure out what to make of Kerr saying, look, we realize that we can't compete, and that doesn't feel good. But also having, your owner come out and say, well, we should be able to win the championship this year feels unrealistic. So at some point they are a little bit trapped. I mean, at some point everybody's a little damned if you do and damned if you don't in this situation. I get that. Yeah. If James Dolan can learn anything, though, it's that over the course of his entire career, I'm not sure speaking has ever really helped James Dolan with the Knicks. Every time he's tried to justify the who, the wow, the when, it just doesn't. It's kind of like Jerry Jones. Like, I get it. You're a billionaire and, you're a billionaire that owns a sports team and has a really crappy band. And I get it. Like, you can do whatever you want because you can afford to do whatever you want. But you can look at it like a PR firm would come at you and say, hey, James Dolan, where's the win? And I guess my question to James Dolan, even saying anything at this point, is really where's the win? Knicks fans are starved for content. I know it. And Knicks fans are enjoying this ride. Let them enjoy this ride for a team that I do agree is really competitive in the East this year. But when you start, coming in and spouting off like that, it just creates such a weirdness that nobody needs. I get it. I don't want an owner to sit on radio and say, well, nah, man, we got no shot at the title. I don't know the right way to handle it other than just not speaking, and there's nothing wrong with not speaking.
And I think there's also a healthy balance. You cannot be an absent, invisible owner. I used to cover the Tennessee Titans, and Amy Adams Strunk, the owner of the Titans, I think did one interview in the 4 years that I was there. And the team was terrible. The team fired general managers and coaches in the span that I was there. And she did one interview with the team reporter. Like, fans deserve answers. Fans deserve to get a behind the scenes peek at what is happening to have faith and confidence in their organization. But that's also a very far cry from going on radio shows every single week like Jerry Jones does. And maybe that you are now putting your coaches and your team in an uncomfortable position because the owner is coming out and saying these things. So I think that there's a very delicate balance. There's a healthy balance. And it's an owner's job to know when to say something, when to speak up, when to put the fan base at ease so they know that our team that we know and we love and we pay a lot of hard-earned money to support is in good hands, versus throwing out headlines like this and putting everybody in an uncomfortable position. What James Dolan did right there was dial up the heat on everyone's seat within the New York Knicks organization. Sometimes that could be a good thing. Sometimes not so much. And this is an instance where I do not think it was a good thing. James Dolan didn't help himself and did not help the New York Knicks in saying what he said.
I agree. And damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. I will say that there's a reason the term coach speak exists. Sometimes you just got to learn to say nothing when you say everything. And that way you can deny it all. I don't know that there's a better solution. I know we'll keep breaking it down. We are just getting started on this 100th episode of Yahoo Sports Daily. More to come. The Game going to join the show. Do it next. Oh, the MVP odds, the ever-changing MVP odds, as Matt Stafford is now the favorite over Drake May as we head into the playoffs. And we're going to get into it in just a couple of minutes with the game. Huge Rams fan. We'll get his thoughts on everything happening with the Rams. But Caroline, this is just such a pivotal moment here for Stafford, for the Rams, considering one thing that we talk about a lot with other teams is what's the future look like. The Rams are in win now mode, and Devontae didn't play the last couple of weeks. Now they come into this playoff run seated right in that 5 spot, which can be really interesting. Devontae coming back in, I think, could re-energize even more out of Stafford, who likely will be the MVP, but the Rams are going to need that through this playoff run.
100%, especially because they've got an uphill battle in the postseason. They're on the road in the first round of the playoffs. I know it's the Carolina Panthers, but look at the game they played on November 30th. At the Carolina Panthers, they lost, and Matthew Stafford had some very uncharacteristic mistakes in that game that ended up costing them that game. So I understand the old adage is anything can happen in the postseason, and sometimes we roll our eyes at that, but I subscribe to that belief. So they're going on the road in the first round of the playoffs. They will be on the road for the entirety of the postseason, more than likely. So this is an uphill battle for the Rams, especially a team that has been kind of limping down the stretch here. Why did the Rams bring in Davante Adams? Because they struggled mightily in the red zone last year and the year prior. What Davante Adams provides is a lethal red zone threat. What Davante Adams provides is somebody else that defenses have to pay attention to leave Puka Nacua wide open. I mean, how many times have we seen Puka doubled, even tripled, since Davante Adams has been on the sidelines? So I think that that Davante Adams is invaluable to this team. I think that it wouldn't be fair to say that Davante Adams is the lone reason why the Rams have kind of struggled down the stretch here, but I think he is a big reason why. So getting him back is going to be massive, not just to get past the Carolina Panthers. I think the Rams can do that. They're capable of doing that. This coaching staff, this team, how much talent they have, and the fact that they're probably going to be pissed off at the fact that they lost to the Panthers earlier in the season, but also throughout the entirety of the grind of the NFC, because it's not just getting past the Panthers. Once you get past the Panthers, you're looking at the Bears or the Packers or the Eagles on the path to a Super Bowl. That is an absolute gauntlet. The Rams are going to need a healthy 100% Davante Adams.
Well, and that's where, again, we keep hearing the MVP argument of short touchdowns. I keep hearing people say, well, Stafford has so many 1-yard touchdown pass, 5-yard touchdown. That's by design, right? That's why they went out and acquired Davante. To your point, that's by design. They're doing exactly what they intended to do with this offense. And, for anybody that doesn't know, the playoffs reseed after the first round, basically. So the lowest remaining seed after the first round then goes to Seattle. So depending on how that plays out, if all the favorites win and the Rams win, well, the Rams will be headed to Seattle. That is not an easy matchup for anybody. Every other possible matchup has them likely going to either, like you mentioned, Philly, Chicago, or the Packers. That there's a weird scenario where they could go to San Francisco. But 3 of those 4 are cold weather environments that are tough for a team that's got to cross country. So also look at just the playoff scheduling. You're going to go to Carolina, then you're going to go back to LA, and then you're going to have to come back across the East Coast, likely, depending on how these other matchups play out. You can end up having to come all the way back to the East where you're taking on Philly. We saw that game last year in the snow. You could be headed to Chicago where you're taking on the Bears. So if you just look across the board, it is really simple for this to get complicated for the Rams, who I believe right now are one of the two best teams in the NFC. It's just a matter of can they play up to that potential. Now, I trust Stafford so much. And that's where, I think so much of what we look at, I've told you before, coaching quarterback combo, and I'll add coach quarterback defense. I don't think there's a more solid, trustworthy coach quarterback defense combo in all of the playoffs than the Rams. So I look at this and say these are just things they have to overcome. I don't think this is a reason that the Rams are throttled back and don't win. I just think it's important to acknowledge that, look, they got to where they are in this window because Stafford's having an MVP season. He's going to have an MVP playoff run too. I don't know that there's a team that's more quarterback reliant on that, because if Matt Stafford sucks, given the matchups they're going to have, I don't see how they survive it.
100%. I mean, because we've seen when Matthew Stafford looks bad, the Rams will lose. We saw that. They can lose to inferior teams when Matthew Stafford makes some of those uncharacteristic mistakes. But you say that the path wouldn't be the reason why the Rams are bounced early. I disagree. I think it could be the reason why. You and I were talking just a few months ago. Time gets away from me. That getting the number 1 overall seed was most imperative for the Rams more than any other team in the NFC, because you're a West Coast warm weather team with a 37-year-old quarterback and a wide receiver that's been banged up, that it was so important that they could stay in the sunny West Coast, that they didn't have to travel cross country like you just mentioned, that they wouldn't have to play at Soldier Field or Lambeau, or wouldn't have to go to some of these freezing cold places. Because when you have a 37-year-old quarterback with back problems, playing in the cold in some of these big games is not necessarily ideal for the Rams. So now that's what they're going to be facing. And if the Rams let's say they do have to go to Philadelphia, we saw that last year. It was a close game. And if that game was played in LA, does it play out differently? Maybe not, but maybe it does. So I think that could potentially be the barrier, because I don't see any barriers for this Rams team internally. I think they have a championship caliber defense. They have the best coach in the NFL. And if you want to say one of the best coaches in the NFL, that's totally fine. I don't disagree with you on that. And then you have a quarterback that's playing at an MVP caliber level. I don't see any massive glaring weaknesses or reasons to not trust this Rams team. So I think the lone barrier that does exist for the Rams is their path. The fact that they're going to have to go on the road. The fact that they're probably going to have to play in snow more likely than not on their path to a Super Bowl. And it doesn't mean that they can't overcome it. It doesn't mean that that's going to be inevitable, that that's their downfall. But that's just kind of what I see as the glaring issue, which I think might make Rams fans kind of uncomfortable, because I view this as the year. I think next year, Fitzy, the window is shut. That this feels like the opportunity for this iteration of this Rams team to get to and or win a Super Bowl. Because once you look beyond next year, it gets a little uncomfy.
No, you're right. And I will quickly say that they have 5 losses this year. 1 is to Philly, 1 is to San Francisco, 1 is to Carolina, 1 is to Seattle. All teams we just talked about that they will be facing throughout this playoff gauntlet. Yep. It is the 100th episode of this show, and we want to give a shout out to the 100 guests that we've had. Look at that little montage there. Well, I mean, not 100 guests. We've had a lot of guests. There's a montage.
Good walk down memory lane.
Isn't it though? Like, I feel like this is just some of the we genuinely appreciate, by the way, as Caroline mentioned earlier, every one of you that takes the time to join, but also every single person that takes the time to get up, especially West Coast people that are getting up early in the morning to hang out with Yahoo Sports Daily. It means a lot. And in honor of the 100th show, we figured we'd have a little bit of 100v1 fun. So let's have a little bit of fun of 100 versus 1. We all know that these scenarios exist. So let's start here. All right, 100 middle school offensive linemen versus 1 Myles Garrett. 100 versus 1. Ooh, I like that picture.
Ooh, that is a great picture. I'm going to go with the middle schoolers here. Now, if it was 50 middle schoolers, I would take Myles Garrett. But you've got 100 hormone-ridden middle schoolers that, like, some of them are kind of big and some of them kind of aren't. But 100 like 13-year-olds, that's a lot to overcome even for the greatest defensive player on the planet. So I lean the 100 middle schoolers.
You know, you've talked me into this because I looked this up, and the the average weight for a 14-year-old boy, which would be kind of middle schoolish, and now they say, according to AI, is about 160 pounds. That seems very high to me. I can't double check that. That seems wildly high. Even if it's 100,
I don't
even if it's
fat shame, but
120
that's
pounds.
large.
Even if it's 120 pounds, you give me 120 pounders that all stack on top of each other to form a big old wall. Now, Myles Garrett can't push that much weight. He can push a lot of weight, but I give the advantage. I'm with you. What about this one? A 100-man scramble or one Scotty Scheffler? Let's get a little. Every golfer listening to this right now is convinced in a scramble. If they could pick their 100, could they beat Scotty?
No. I'm rocking with Scotty Scheffler on this one because there's just a physical disadvantage with Myles Garrett and the 100 middle schoolers. That's a lot of middle schoolers. But here, Scotty Scheffler's the best golfer on the planet right now. I don't think that there are 100 just random Joe Schmoes off the street that could take down Scotty Scheffler. So no, I'll rock with Scotty.
All right, but if we're playing best ball here and all 100 are teeing off, you're taking the best shot of every single player across the way. Here's the problem. I don't think any of these 100 are going to be able to putt under pressure, knowing that Scotty's standing right there just looking at him. Putt loses. So, yeah, I'm with you. Scotty wins this. What about 100 job openings or one Lane Kiffin?
That's my favorite rivalry in sports right now is any job opening and Lane Kiffin.
These Photoshops, Doug has outdone himself.
They're incredible. Lane Kiffin wishes he was that jacked. And look at poor little Juice. Look how sad he is. His dad left him. Poor baby. Taking the job openings. Yeah, those are definitely going to take down Lane Kiffin. One job opening took down Lane Kiffin. So what can 100 do?
We got the wrong thing. It's one telestrator that took down Lane Kiffin when he was the coach of the Raiders. Look it up, kids, if you don't remember that press conference. All right, how about this one? 100 beer league hitters. 100 beer league hitters or one Paul Skeens. Could one person make any contact with Paul Skeens?
Now, if you ask the beer league hitters, they're going to say 100% yes, because those are the same beer league hitters that say, I could beat Caitlin Clark one-on-one. I could beat an entire WNBA team just myself, as they pick their noses. It's definitely Paul Skeens. I would take best hitter in Major League Baseball versus Paul Skeens. I'm taking Paul Skeens, much less 100 crap bum beer leaguers. Give me Paul Skeens 100%.
I'm with you. I think that one of the 100 might be able to make contact, but there's no way that they make any contact that's meaningful. So it's that sort of contact where the ball just sort of dribbles foul, and it's like, I got to be.
I tipped it. I tipped it. Like, no, you didn't.
We're going to go back to replay, and we're going to be looking at the ump the entire time to figure out exactly whether or not any contact was made at all. And you are right, by the way. We need more people in the world to just be honest. I want to start a consulting business where I just come in and I'm honest with your family about the lack of talent that your family has. I just think that it's an important, like somebody needs to tell these beer league hitters, no, you cannot hit off Paul Skeens, or just let them get embarrassed. Like that old show where it was the pros versus the Joes and people thought they could take him on. How about this one?
I do want that though.
Yeah,
especially because we have the Olympics coming up, and especially the Winter Olympics. So many people think like, oh, it's just sliding around on ice. I could do that. No, you couldn't. So what I want is just a regular average person. I can volunteer as tribute. I have no athletic ability. I want to see one average person out there ice skating, speed skating, snowboarding, doing all of these Olympic events just as a barometer for everyone to see that, like, look, what they're doing is really hard. Even though they make it look incredibly easy, it's not.
I tell my friends all the time, if your fat ass has to groan to get up to go get another bag of potato chips in between commercial breaks on a football game, I don't care how good you think you'd be at handball, you wouldn't. 100 Pee Wee linebackers or one Derrick Henry. We got the same math here. 100 Pee Wee linebackers, though. Now we're talking little. There's no way. Their arms, their little itty Pee Wee arms can't wrap around them thighs. Like Derrick Henry's just going to pick them all up like it's leg day. Derrick Henry.
The first time I saw Derrick Henry in person is imprinted in my brain because I remember standing there with my jaw down on the floor thinking, human beings are built like that? That is not a man. That is a machine. Derrick Henry is one of the most impressively built human beings, most tailor-made people to play the game of football that I've ever seen in my entire life. He is so strong, he is so big, he is so quick, he's so tall. Give me Derrick Henry. I mean, I think he would go exactly like that. That Derrick Henry would just stiff arm the Pee-wee, like, choo, 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 and would just knock him across the field with ease. I think I'm taking Derrick Henry, and it's at minus odds.
I asked Derrick Henry in the offseason, I think it was last year, what a cheat meal day looks like for Derrick Henry because he's such a large human. And he just looked at me blank and said, man, once I start training for the season, there are no cheat meals. Like, that's just, the man is built different. He is built different in every
Truly.
possible way. There is one matchup this weekend that is built different in the NFL playoffs. We will tell you about it next. It's the matchup of the Millennium of the Century of the Week. We'll preview it coming up next on this 100th episode of Yahoo Sports Daily. Washington quarterback Damon Williams is entering the transfer portal with a do not contact tag that per Pete Thamel. He threw for 3,065 yards this season, rushed for 611 more. And this is very controversial because for anyone not following this story, 4 days before entering the transfer portal, he re-signed his revenue sharing agreement and agreed to return to Washington. So Washington is now making it clear that they are going to do everything legally within their power to hold him to a binding agreement. Caroline, this is the modern world of college football. And as a person that supports the modern world of college football, I support all sides of it. It is a very simple modern world here. At this point, you got agents, you got attorneys, you got a ton of people around you. When you put your signature on a revenue sharing contract for a year, 4 days later, you can't just go into the transfer portal. This feels like it is legal ickiness that Washington is going to fight, which is probably important for the entire sport.
It feels like a precedent-setting kind of thing, an example-making kind of situation. And here is maybe a rude awakening for the current era that we live in college sports. You know, in college sports now, players hold the control. And I think that's a great thing. I think it's a great thing that players now can control their futures, can control where is best for them. They can control their own narrative. I don't want to get it twisted that that is a very good thing for sports, in my opinion. Power to the players will always be my philosophy. But when players get paid like professionals, you're going to get treated like a professional. When you get paid like an adult, you get treated like an adult. And when you're a professional and when you're an adult and you sign a contract that is a legally binding agreement, especially when millions of dollars are involved, you don't get to say, ooh, yikes, never mind, I take it back. You don't get to just be released of that contract, that legally binding agreement, like it's no problem. And Washington will say, yep, totally understand, go ahead and move on. Washington will fight this in court. Washington should fight this in court because it is a legally binding agreement. I also think that that's the legal side of things. And I think it'll be a fascinating thing to follow how the NCAA gets involved, how this kind of pans out for Damon Williams in Washington. I don't expect it to just be something that's incredibly easy that gets resolved overnight. The other side of it, though, is the football side of things. We've heard so many coaches, we heard Eli Drinkwitz talk about this not too long ago, talking about tampering, the big T word. It happens. It's happened since the beginning of time. It's not going to go anywhere. But this feels fishy, that Damon Williams signs this contract, a revenue share agreement with Washington. And then all of a sudden he wants out of it. And then it was reported last night that LSU has given him an offer. That happened pretty quickly. That happened in the span of minutes, maybe hours. So it's very clearly he's being tampered with. If it's just LSU or, maybe any other teams or maybe many other schools out there, there is tampering going on. And I don't think it's going to be that obvious to point out. What does the NCAA do about that? I think will be fascinating and what comes from all of this.
I, along with you, have often been pro athlete empowerment. And I've made the comparison many times based on the records that are hanging up behind me between sports and the music business. I will just say, when I signed my first record contract as a kid, it was not a good one. And then you wake up one day and realize, oh my God, I just signed a terrible contract, and you have to deal with the consequences. That is just what happens no matter what your line of business is when you are in the legal contract era. So we'll keep you updated on that. In the meantime, we have more breaking college football news. This just in, it looks like we've got some draft news here. Ty Simpson going pro. Pete Thamel tweeting out, Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson is turning pro. He just informed the Alabama coaches of his decision. There was some question on whether or not he was going to come out, whether or not he was going to transfer somewhere else, perhaps, whether or not he was going to return to Alabama, which seemed the least likely of these scenarios. But frankly, Caroline, as we sit right now, as we tape this, we don't know if Dante Moore is coming out in the draft or not. So as we sit right now, Ty Simpson becomes the second best quarterback in this year's draft behind Fernando Mendoza, who we presume is coming out.
This surprises me. I don't think that Ty Simpson is ready. We look at so many players, so many quarterbacks who have had instant success. I look at Jayden Daniels as being probably the best example of that. Offensive Rookie of the Year. It was getting MVP buzz going into the season. Obviously, injuries sideline that. We know the story. I don't have to get into it. It's because Jayden Daniels played 5 years of college football, started for 5 years in college football. Ty Simpson doesn't have very much college football experience. He hasn't taken a ton of snaps at Alabama. Is he ready for the NFL? I have questions for that, especially the way that he played down the stretch. I think, and look, good for Ty Simpson. He made the best decision for himself. I wish him nothing but the best. I do think this is more of a factor of the quarterback market in the NFL more than it is his own personal decision. He feels like he's ready. He feels like this is the right decision for him, just, independent of anything else happening in the NFL. How many quarterback needy teams are there right now? Just without counting 6, 7, just off the top of my head. Well, there is one quarterback right now declared for the draft that people view as, the draft gurus view as, an eventual franchise quarterback, and that is Fernando Mendoza. Ty Simpson might be looking around and saying, look, I might not be 100% fully cooked, but I'm going to get picked at the top of the draft because all of these teams need me. These teams need quarterbacks, and just the need in the market skyrockets his value. So I think it's more a factor of that, and I wish Ty Simpson nothing but the best moving forward.
I will double down on that and remind everybody, look, it's always dangerous when we look at next year's draft class. I will remind people that a year ago, when the Titans were on the clock with the first overall pick and Cam Ward looked to be it, so many people said, no, don't take a quarterback this year. Take one next year. The class looks much better.
Wait for Arch.
Now we sit here now, and it's like, oh, well, don't take a quarterback this year. Take one next year because next year's class looks much better. They're already trying to tell all of us that the 2027 NFL draft class looks like it's going to be the epic one. It's dangerous to do that. But to your point, Caroline, Ty Simpson right now can look around and say, man, there's a shot that I'm the third quarterback or the second quarterback. There's a shot that I go in the first 12 pick. If we look historically, if you're one of the top 3 picks in the quarterback class, in your class, you're going to go in the top half of the first round. I don't know that we can make those assurances on what is expected right now to be a deeper quarterback class in a year. So this all makes sense. But to your point, important note here, until this year, in 2023, he was 11-20 throwing the football. In 2024, he was 14-25. For anyone that says we don't have a lot of proof of concept on Dante Moore, I'll remind you, we don't have a lot of proof of concept on Ty Simpson either, even though he's a little bit older.
Yeah, and having that experience is so incredibly important. The other side of that, though, is let me look up what Ty Simpson's age is. I don't know that off the top of my head. The other side, he's 23. So he would be getting his second contract at 27 or 28. That's still plenty of time to eke out the prime of a certain quarterback. The other side of players that stay in college for 6 or 7 years, well, he's getting his second contract at 30 or 31. So it starts to shrink the amount of money that you're able to make at the next level. So at least what you're getting is kind of a raw quarterback with not a ton of experience, but plenty of leeway and plenty of time to open in his prime.
We want to thank you guys again. 100 episodes is special. Couldn't do it out without Mike Goldfarb, Josh Golden, Hutton Jackson, Doug Branson, and, of course, all the bosses that let us do this every day. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching us.